It's late January, and your garden looks dead. The soil is partially frozen. The air temperature is hovering in the 30s and 40s. And every gardening calendar you've ever seen says to wait until March or April to start planting. So you wait for a long time. Here's what changes everything. 20 specific seeds not only tolerate late January planting, they prefer it because they need cold soil and short days. This isn't about taking risks or gambling on weather. This is about understanding which crops evolved to grow in cold conditions and using that biology to harvest before anyone else even plants. Most gardeners approach spring completely backwards. They're sitting inside reading seed catalogs, waiting for some arbitrary frost-free date, convincing themselves that late January is too early to plant anything. Meanwhile, your soil temperature is already hitting 40 to 50 degrees on sunny afternoons, which is exactly the range where cold, hardy crops germinate. But here's what they miss, and this is where conventional gardening advice completely fails you. Cold, hardy crops don't just tolerate cold soil, they need it. They evolved to germinate when temperatures are low and day length is short, because that's when they avoid the heat stress that kills them later. If you plant spinach on January 25th, you'll harvest by late March. If you wait until April to plant that same spinach, you'll harvest in June, right when it bolts from heat and turns bitter. That's not a minor timing difference. That's the difference between eating fresh greens for 10 weeks versus eating them for 2 weeks before they're done. Think about it. You're literally throwing away 8 weeks of harvest by following advice designed for people who don't understand how cold season crops work. Let's start with the foundation. The seeds that not only survive January planting, but actually perform better because of it. First seed, spinach. It germinates in soil as cold as 35 degrees, which means your raised beds are already warm enough right now. It survives hard frosts, down to 20 degrees once established, and it goes from seed to harvestable leaves in 40 to 50 days depending on variety. You can direct sow it now in rows 6 inches apart, seeds 1 inch apart, 1/4 inch deep. If your soil is still frozen, wait for a 3-day forecast where daytime highs break 40 degrees. That's enough to soften the top 2 inches. Plant your first succession now. Then plant again every 2 weeks through mid-March. That gives you continuous harvest from late March through May instead of one overwhelming flush that you can't eat fast enough. Use row cover. Basic Gourmet fabric adds 4 to 8 degrees of frost protection without blocking light. Your spinach keeps growing even when overnight temps drop into the 20s. Second seed, arugula. Faster than spinach, more cold tolerant than most people realize, and it goes from seed to salad in 25 to 30 days. That's absurdly fast. It germinates at 40 degrees, which means you're in the planting window right now. Plant it the same way you plant spinach. Direct sow in rows, 1/4 inch deep, 1 inch apart. The leaves get spicier as they mature, so harvest young at 3 to 4 inches for mild greens. Let them grow to 6 inches, and you get that characteristic peppery bite that costs $8 per bag at Whole Foods. Here's the key with arugula. It bolts fast once temperatures consistently hit 75 degrees. Your late January planting gives you a 6-week harvest window before it's done. Wait until April, and you get 2 weeks before it flowers. You're literally cutting your harvest window in half by following conventional timing. Third seed, mâche, also called corn salad. Most American gardeners have never heard of it, but it's a staple in European winter gardens because it's borderline indestructible in cold weather. Mâche survives temperatures down to 10 degrees without protection. 10 degrees. It grows slowly but steadily through winter and produces tender, nutty leaves that make spinach look coarse. Plant it now in tight clusters, broadcast the seeds and barely cover them, and you'll have harvestable rosettes by early April. It doesn't bolt easily, so it keeps producing even as spring warms up. This is one of those crops that separates gardeners who actually know what they're doing from people who just follow whatever the seed packet says. Fourth and fifth seeds, winter lettuce varieties. Now I know what you're thinking. Lettuce is lettuce, right? Wrong. Not all lettuce is created equal for cold planting. You want varieties bred specifically for cold tolerance, winter density, Arctic King, North Pole. These germinate at 45 degrees, tolerate repeated light frosts, and form dense heads that protect their inner leaves from cold damage. Direct sow them now or start them in cell trays if your soil is questionable, then transplant in 2 to 3 weeks. Lettuce planted in late January produces heads by early April, which is exactly when demand is highest and grocery store prices spike. While you're buying $6 heads of organic lettuce, you're cutting them from your garden for free. Sixth seed, kale. Here's where people get confused, because kale is famous for being cold hardy, but they think that means it's only planted in fall for winter harvest. That's missing half the picture. Kale planted in late January grows slowly through February, then explodes in March when day length increases and temperatures moderate. You get tender baby kale leaves for salads by mid-March and full-size cooking greens by early April. Plant varieties like Winterbor, Red Russian, or Lacinato. They're all tested for cold germination and proven reliable. Direct sow or transplant, your choice. If you transplant, start seeds indoors now and move them out in 3 to 4 weeks when they have 2 true leaves. Kale survives multiple hard freezes without damage. In fact, frost improves the flavor by converting starches to sugars, which is why fall kale tastes better than summer kale. Seventh seed, more spinach, but different varieties. This is where succession planting starts to make sense as a system instead of just planting the same thing twice. Your first planting was a fast-maturing variety like Bloomsdale or Space. Your second planting, 2 weeks later, should be a slower, bolt-resistant variety like Thai or Regiment. Stagger your varieties and planting dates, and you engineer continuous harvest instead of a single overwhelming flush followed by nothing. Now you have 7 seeds in the ground, all of them cold hardy, all of them germinating in conditions most gardeners think are dormant, all of them setting you up to harvest before conventional spring planting even begins. Now let's talk about seeds that don't just survive cold. They actually need it to perform well, and if you wait until it's warm, they fail completely. Seed 8, fava beans. Here's what most American gardeners miss. They think beans need warm soil because they're used to green beans and snap beans. Wrong category. Fava beans are cool season legumes that germinate in soil as cold as 40 degrees and actually suffer in heat. Plant them now, 2 inches deep, 4 to 6 inches apart, and they'll establish slowly through late winter, then surge in early spring. By late April, you're harvesting pods while your neighbors are just planting green beans that won't produce until July. That's a 3-month advantage. But here's what makes favas brilliant for system design, and this is where most people completely miss the point. They fix atmospheric nitrogen through root nodules, which means they're actively building soil fertility while they grow. When you harvest the pods, cut the plants at ground level and leave the roots in place. Those nitrogen-rich roots decompose and feed whatever you plant next. You're not just growing food, you're improving your soil without buying amendments. Ninth seed, sugar snap peas, another cool season legume, but faster and more familiar than favas. Sugar snaps germinate at 45 degrees, climb a trellis or fence for vertical production, and go from seed to edible pods in 60 days. Plant them along a south-facing fence or wall for extra warmth and wind protection. Space seeds 2 inches apart, 1 inch deep. They'll germinate slowly, establish through February, then explode with growth in March when day length increases. By mid-April, you're eating sweet, crunchy pods that cost $8 per pound at farmers markets. The beauty of peas is that they're self-trellising if you give them something to climb. Put up a simple string trellis or use existing fencing. They'll climb 6 feet if you let them, which means you're producing pounds of food from minimal ground space. And like favas, they fix nitrogen while they grow. You're building soil fertility as a side effect of harvesting food. 10th seed, radishes. This is where succession planting becomes non-negotiable. Radishes go from seed to harvest in 25 to 30 days, which is faster than almost anything else you can grow. Plant them now, then plant more every 10 days through early March. That gives you continuous harvest from late February through April instead of one giant flush that overwhelms you. Direct sow them 1/4 inch deep, 1 inch apart, in rows 6 inches apart. Thin to 2 inches apart once they germinate. Here's what most people don't understand about radishes. Radishes grown in cool weather stay crisp and mild. Radishes grown in heat turn woody and bitter. Your late January planting captures the sweet spot. Wait until April and you're eating inferior radishes that nobody wants. Varieties matter here. Cherry Belle and French Breakfast are reliable for cold planting. Easter egg mix gives you color variety. Daikon types can be planted now, but take longer to mature, around 50 days. 11th and 12th seeds, turnips and their Japanese relatives, Tokyo, turnips, and Hakare varieties. These are radish-adjacent, but larger, sweeter, and more versatile. Turnips germinate at 45 degrees and mature in 45 to 55 days depending on size. Plant them like radishes, but space them 3 inches apart after thinning. Harvest them young at golf ball size for sweet, tender roots and mild greens. Let them grow larger, and you get storage roots that last weeks in the refrigerator. The greens are a separate crop. Harvest outer leaves continuously, and the plant keeps producing. Tokyo and Hakare turnips are Japanese varieties bred specifically for salad use. They're white, smooth-skinned, and incredibly sweet when harvested small. They're also expensive in stores, like $12 per pound at farmers markets, and easy to grow. Plant them now, and you're eating gourmet turnips in early spring, while conventional gardeners are still ordering seeds online. 13th and 14th seeds, Asian greens, Mizuna, and bok choy. These are cold-tolerant, fast-growing, and completely underutilized in American gardens, which is insane because they're easier to grow than lettuce. Mizuna germinates at 40 degrees, grows in loose rosettes with deeply serrated leaves, and produces continuously if you harvest outer leaves. It's mildly spicy, excellent in salads or stir-fries, and keeps producing even through light freezes. Plant it broadcast style or in rows, barely cover the seeds, and thin to 4 inches apart. Bok choy is slower, but hardier. It forms tight heads similar to lettuce, but with thick, crisp stems and dark green leaves. Plant it now, and harvest baby bok choy in 40 days, or full-size heads in 55 days. It's cold tolerant to 25 degrees and provides massive yields from small space. Space plants 6 inches apart for baby bok choy, 8 inches apart for full size. Both Mizuna and bok choy are brassicas, which means they're related to kale and cabbage. That means they benefit from the same row cover protection, and they fit into the same crop rotation patterns. If you're already set up to grow kale, you're set up to grow these. 15th seed, cilantro. Here's where most people fail with cilantro, and it's completely predictable. They plant it in warm weather and it bolts in 2 weeks. Then they complain that cilantro is hard to grow. Cilantro isn't hard to grow. You're just planting it at the wrong time. Cilantro is a cool season herb that needs cold soil to germinate properly and short days to produce leaves instead of flowers. Plant it now, and you get 10 to 12 weeks of continuous leaf harvest. Plant it in April, and you get 2 weeks before it flowers. That's not a minor difference. Here's where it gets interesting. Seeds that most people don't even consider food crops, but that provide gourmet-level harvests if you understand what you're doing. Seed 17. Claytonia, also called miner's lettuce. This is a wild edible that was domesticated specifically for cold season gardens. And it's one of those crops that makes you look like a genius when you serve it to guests. It germinates at 35 degrees, survives single-digit temperatures, and produces succulent, disc-shaped leaves with mild, sweet flavor. It self-sows aggressively, which means you plant it once and it comes back year after year without any work from you. Broadcast the tiny seeds over prepared soil, barely cover them, and let them establish through February. By March, you're harvesting handfuls of leaves that cost $12 per pound at specialty stores. Claytonia grows low and spreads laterally, which makes it excellent as living mulch under taller crops. Plant it between your kale and lettuce rows, and it fills bare soil, suppresses weeds, and gives you a bonus harvest. Your stacking functions: mulch plus food from the same plant. 18th seed, sorrel. This is a perennial herb that's treated like a vegetable in French cooking, and once you understand how it works, you'll never buy it again. Sorrel has a sharp, lemony flavor from oxalic acid, and it's used in soups, sauces, and salads. Plant it now from seed, and it establishes slowly, then produces for years with zero maintenance. It survives hard freezes, tolerates shade, and comes back stronger each spring. Seeds germinate at 40 degrees. Plant them 1/4 inch deep, 6 inches apart, and thin to 12 inches once established. Harvest outer leaves continuously, and the plant keeps producing from the crown. One planting gives you a perennial harvest that costs nothing after the first year. That's the real value. You plant once and harvest forever. 19th seed, overwintered onion sets. Now I know what you're thinking. These aren't seeds, they're small bulbs. You're right. But they're planted the same way, and they give you the earliest onions possible, so they belong on this list. Plant sets now, 2 inches deep, 4 inches apart, and they establish roots through winter, then surge with top growth in early spring. By late April, you're harvesting green onions. By late May, you're harvesting full-size bulbs. Compare that to spring-planted onions that don't mature until July or August. You're gaining 2 to 3 months of harvest time by planting now instead of waiting. Varieties like Red Baron, Stuttgarter, and Yellow Ebenezer are bred specifically for fall or late winter planting. They survive freezing soil because they're dormant bulbs, not actively growing plants. Once soil temperatures rise above 40 degrees, they start growing. It's biology working for you instead of against you. 20th seed. Perennial walking onions, also called Egyptian onions. These are the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it crop, and they're one of those things that separates experienced gardeners from beginners. Walking onions produce clusters of small bulbs at the top of their stems instead of flowers. Those bulbs get heavy, bend the stem to the ground, and plant themselves. The onion literally walks across your garden year after year without any intervention from you. You harvest the top sets for cooking. They're small, but intensely flavored. You harvest the underground bulbs like regular onions. You harvest the green tops like scallions. One plant gives you 3 different harvests, and it propagates itself indefinitely. Plant top sets, or divisions now, 4 inches deep, 6 inches apart. They establish through winter and start producing in spring. Once established, they're perennial in zones 3 through 9. You plant them once and harvest forever. Now you have all 20 seeds, but seeds alone don't guarantee success. You need to understand the environmental strategies that turn cold, hardy seeds into reliable harvests, because this is where most people fail, even when they have the right information. Let's talk about soil preparation. Your soil should be amended with compost now, not later. Compost added in late January breaks down slowly through February and March, which means nutrients become available exactly when your seedlings need them. Don't use fresh manure. It's too hot for cold season crops, and it can burn young roots. Use finished compost, aged manure, or worm castings. Spread 2 to 3 inches over your planting area and work it into the top 4 to 6 inches of soil. If your beds are already established and planted with cover crops, chop those cover crops at ground level and leave the residue as surface mulch. The roots decompose in place and add organic matter without disturbing soil structure. This is called chop and drop, and it's how you build fertility without tilling and destroying soil biology. Your pathways should be mulched now. Mulch prevents mud, suppresses weeds, and adds organic matter as it breaks down. Use straw, shredded leaves, or wood chips. Lay it 4 to 6 inches thick. As you walk on it through winter and spring, it compacts and integrates into the soil. For brand new beds, use the cardboard method. Lay cardboard over grass or weeds, cover with 4 to 6 inches of compost or soil mix, and plant directly into the compost layer. The cardboard suppresses existing vegetation, and by April, it's decomposed enough that roots penetrate down into native soil. You're building beds and planting simultaneously. Protection strategies are what separate successful cold planting from failed experiments, and this is non-negotiable if you're in zones 5 through 7. Row covers add 4 to 8 degrees of frost protection without blocking light or preventing rain from reaching plants. Drape reме fabric directly over seeded areas, anchor the edges with soil or landscape staples, and leave it in place until temperatures consistently stay above 40 degrees. Cold frames are the next level. A cold frame is basically a bottomless box with a transparent lid, glass, polycarbonate, or heavy plastic. It creates a microclimate that's 10 to 15 degrees warmer than ambient temperature. You can build a simple cold frame from scrap lumber and old windows, or buy modular kits. Place it over your seeded beds and vent it during warm days to prevent overheating. South-facing walls create passive microclimates. Masonry or brick walls absorb heat during the day and radiate it at night, which keeps adjacent soil several degrees warmer than open garden areas. Plant your earliest crops against south-facing walls, and you gain a week or two of maturity time without any additional infrastructure. Simple plastic sheet cloches work for individual plantings. Cut the bottom off a milk jug, place it over a seeded area, and push it into the soil. It acts as a mini greenhouse. Vent it during warm days by removing the cap. These are free, effective, and scalable to any garden size. Now let's address the failure points, because understanding what can go wrong prevents you from wasting time and seed. Seed rot is the biggest risk in cold, wet soil. Seeds that sit in saturated soil below 40 degrees for more than 2 weeks can rot before germinating. The solution isn't to avoid planting. It's to plant shallower than normal and wait for a forecast that shows 3 consecutive days above 40 degrees. That gives seeds enough warmth to break dormancy and start germinating before rot sets in. Slow germination is expected, not a failure. Seeds that germinate in 7 days at 60-degree soil temps take 2 to 3 weeks at 40 degrees. That's normal biology. Don't assume your seeds failed just because nothing emerges in the first week. Wait 3 weeks before reseeding. Pest pressure in winter is almost non-existent, which is a massive advantage that nobody talks about. Slugs and aphids don't emerge until soil temperatures consistently hit 50 degrees. That means your cold-planted crops grow in a nearly pest-free environment. Compare that to spring-planted crops that face immediate insect pressure the moment they emerge. These 20 seeds work together as a system, not as isolated crops. And this is the key insight that changes everything. Your early greens provide fresh eating while you're starting tomatoes and peppers indoors. Your fava beans fix nitrogen that feeds heavy feeders planted later. Your radish holes become transplant sites for warm season crops. Your succession plantings create continuous yield from late March through June instead of boom-bust cycles, where you're overwhelmed one week and starving the next. This interconnected approach is what separates early harvest gardeners from conventional planters. While neighbors are buying transplants and hoping for good weather, you're already harvesting and planning your summer crops. By April, you're seen as the knowledgeable gardener instead of the weird early starter who's wasting time. But here's the psychological reality, and this is where most people completely fail even when they have all the information. You have to be comfortable planting while everyone else waits. Can you handle neighbors thinking you're wasting time and seed when you're actually engineering a 6-week advantage? Can you resist the urge to wait just because conventional wisdom says it's too early? This is where execution separates from knowledge. You know the information now, but can you act on it without social permission? You don't need permission. You need results. And results come from planting now, not from waiting until conditions feel safe and everyone else is doing it too. Don't plant all 20 seeds this week. That's overwhelming, and it sets you up for failure through abandoned projects. Start with 5 to 8 crops you'll actually eat: spinach, lettuce, radishes, peas, and kale are the foundation. Plant them this week. 2 weeks from now, add 3 to 5 more based on what germinated successfully and what you have space for. Build confidence through incremental success instead of trying to implement everything at once and burning out. Late January planting becomes an annual practice once you see results. This isn't a one-time experiment. It's an identity shift from spring gardener to year-round grower. Once you're harvesting in early April while neighbors are just planting, you'll never wait again. The habit forms automatically because the results are undeniable and the advantage is massive. 8 weeks from now, you'll either be eating fresh salads, snap peas, and gourmet greens from your garden, or you'll be standing in the produce aisle wishing you'd planted when you had the chance. Your neighbors who started in late January will be harvesting. The soil temperature is already right. The day length is increasing. The weather is working for you if you act now.